But did I lose Morgan? Yes, it looks like maybe I lost Morgan. Colin, would you like to jump in while Morgan gets situated?
Sure. Yeah, I can. Yes. Oh, Morgan, you ready to go?
I am, and I'm having weird internet issues, and I'll fix it on my end. Gabby, did you check to see if Karen is a person on our task force with another?
Karen, would you like to speak and let us know who you are?
There we go. Hi, this is Cheryl Ellis. I'm at my neighbor Karen's house because my internet is down.
Okay, hi Cheryl.
Perfect. I will
Hi.
rename you Cheryl so we know who you are.
Thank you.
Good, I'm glad we checked. I will just say if there are welcome to members of the public who are joining us. You're joining as attendees, and you hopefully can hear us and see us really well. If by oh, I see Cassie's in the attendee list, Gabby. So and thank you as we iron out our Zoom functionalities here. So Cassie's in there, but if you are a member of the public, thank you for joining, and we hope that it was easy to find information on how to join and that was straightforward for you. And if you're listening to this after the fact and you did have just needed to better understand how to access via Zoom, just we're open to changes. But like Gabby said, this is hopefully our only meeting virtually, and we'll reconvene in person on July 31st, our next meeting. So thanks everyone for joining and for the change in venue here. And I see from our task force, I see Michael, welcome, Cheryl, Cassie, Chris, who did I write down? Jeff, Scott, welcome. And today we're missing Lisa and Cheryl. I don't see Sherry actually.
Sherry.
I don't see Sherry. Sherry, if you're in the attendees, let us know. Otherwise, Lisa Huff is not able to join today. So welcome to the 6 task force members we have with us. Our agenda for today, we're going to stay focused on our agenda. We have 3 big items, or 2, and if time allows, a third to get through. Our first is to come full circle on our landfill entrance recommendations. I've spoken to each of you individually, and also we're carrying forward some of the recommendations and discussion that we heard at our second meeting. So our main task for today is stay focused on coming to an informed recommendation around a new entrance location for the Front Range landfill. We'd then like to get into a discussion around roadway and routes. So if we can assume that we will have a new entrance in a certain area, are there areas where we would like to further restrict traffic? Are there areas where the traffic patterns might be changed, or where existing traffic patterns need to be addressed? And again, it's in the spirit of hearing different voices, hearing different perspectives, and working on representing the communities and responding to kind of the basic human needs of those who live around the landfill, and how to make recommendations to Waste Connections so that Waste Connections can fulfill its commitment to being a good neighbor. The last item that's not on the agenda here, and we'll reserve it if we have time, and I hope we do, it's an important discussion, is to start to think about the different options for trading land, moving the maintenance yard around, potentially expanding the permitted area for the landfill. And we're hedging here. We're just gathering information at this point today to bring back to Waste Connections and Weaver Consultants so that at our 4th meeting on July 31st, we can have a more robust, informed discussion around looking at the permitted boundaries and the desired future conditions for the landfill. We'll wrap up by 8:30. Everyone will be, we'll part ways at 8:30, but before we do, we'll review action items and any parking lot items that we noted. Meeting objectives, again, we'll go through the public comments like we do at every meeting, understanding the different voices and interests that are represented by through our public comments. I have a summary of that. We'll finalize that landfill entrance recommendation, and then we'll start discussing roadways and routes. So welcome to our project team here. Hopefully we're all friendly enough, you know our faces and our names, but I'm Morgan Lomley. I'm the facilitator of this landfill task force. I'm joined by my colleague, Colin Johnson. And I'll ask you to raise your hands as your name is called. David Frank, the Director of Environmental Services, is here. We have Erica Thorley, Sustainability Manager. Gabby Ray is Director of Communications and Community Engagement. And a special thank you to Gabby for helping us pivot our meeting format and getting everything set up. That was a big lift, and we're off. We're ready to go. From Waste Connections, you'll see Randy Torville, and the district manager for Waste Connections, Mark Adams, engineering manager. Dalton Ellis, I don't believe is with us today, but he's joined us at past meetings and has been a great help for us as we talk through all this. From Weaver Consultants, we have Jason Edwards and Chuck Marsh. So say hello. And our task force. So I to join. I see Chris and Scott and Cassie. So welcome everyone.
Morgan, we just lost you for a second there. So if you could go over the task force roster again, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Do you want to say
Closed caption?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, we have Jeff with us today, Cheryl, Michael, Chris, Scott, and Cassie. I don't see Sherry Kunst. If you are here in the attendees kind of room, Sherry, please holler. And we're not joined today by Lisa. We'll catch her up later. Quick items on meeting participation. You've heard me say these before, and these are to ensure that what we share today is shared in a respectful manner. We are open and willing to understand different perspectives. So we'll remain open-minded. We'll interact respectfully with participants. We're going to stay focused on our agenda today, and you know, we've made a lot of space in past meetings to understand where people are coming from, just your different lived experiences being next to the landfill. And I'm going to keep it a little bit tighter today, knowing that we have 4 meetings left and we have a lot to cover. So again, it's entrance, it's roots, and if time allows, land swaps today. Participate in an active and focused manner. I know that on Zoom sometimes it's easy to get distracted, but we'll spend 2 solid hours together, and we ask for your focused attention in the next 2 hours. We'll strive to listen actively. Let's avoid repetition. If you feel like you've shared something with me before, if you feel like you've shared something with others in this task force, know that it's been heard, and we are not going to go back and revisit issues that have hopefully been addressed in the past. What we're going to do is try to make sure that our recommendations do include those concerns and those priorities. And our goal with this recommendation is just to provide a clear and specific recommendation to Waste Connections. So that is what's most helpful and constructive at this time. So we're on Zoom. We're asking everyone who, in the task force to keep their video on if that's appropriate for you today. That's what we would love to see. Use your raise hand function. There's a little thing you'll see. It says raise hand. I'll mind the queue and I'll be able to see who has their hand raised up, and we'll use that to go through and collect opinions and feedback. And when you're not speaking, just mute yourself. Otherwise, Gabby will go in and mute you. For members of the public, again, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for your commitment to this process and your interest and all the wonderful comments we've received to date. That's really helped us frame some of these recommendations. In-person meetings, we've always encouraged you to write paper comments, and we've logged those on the Erie Landfill Task Force website as we would any comment. Today, you can use the Q&A function to log your comments and questions, and those will be recorded. They're part of kind of our informal record of public comments that we're gathering for this process. And you'll see the website there for you to add comments. erieco.us/landfill task force. Okay, so meeting 2 action items. We had a number of action items and information needs that came from the meeting, our second meeting, and we thought it'd be good to give you all an update on where those stand. And I'm looking at 2 screens here, so thanks for bearing with me. The first was to share CDOT plans for Colorado Highway 7 between Brighton and Boulder. That is in the Landfill Task Force meeting summary. For those of you on the task force, you've seen that. And for the members of the public, those meeting summaries are publicly available. So that information is in there. Second, provide an updated crash
Looks like we may have lost Morgan for a moment, so I can go ahead and just kind of work us through this section. Hopefully she'll be able to rejoin. Oh, lost her altogether. Okay. No worries. Folks can bear with me for a minute. I can share my screen and we can continue from there.
Colin, yeah, I'm gonna move in my home. I don't know what my problem is. I'm gonna fix it, but Colin, if you don't mind going through the action items, I'll rejoin in just a second.
Sure thing. Yep. Um, Thanks for bearing with us, folks. Okay. Okay, can I just get a thumbs up from a few folks? Are you able to see my screen okay? Slide deck?
No, you're not
No.
sharing.
Not, okay. Strange, okay.
And Morgan, I might suggest that you, if you want to start talking, you might want to just turn your camera off. It usually saves bandwidth, so it doesn't cut you out.
Okay. Great. I'll have Colin shared the slides from here on out and I should be in a better spot. So,
Okay. Is the sharing working now?
yep, we can see that.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you. And thanks everyone for making it work. Third was gathering information about the haulers. We have that information to share today, so that's in our slide deck later on. The fourth was developing frequently asked questions. We heard this across the board, and we heard a lot of the same questions. And so there is a FAQ page front and center on the Landfill Task Force webpage. And I think there's 14 to 15 questions of on all sorts of topics around the landfill. So those are available for the public. The fifth here is draft entrance location recommendations for the task force consideration. We've shared that with you all and we'll go into those in more detail today. And then coordinate with Waste Connections to organize a tour of potential landfill entrance locations. And that happened last week. Colin joined on behalf of our facilitation team. And I think we had 5 folks from the task force too. So we'll share some takeaways from that. I'll pause. Any task force members have questions around the status of these action items? Okay. All right, next slide, Colin. Public comments. So this is where we take a second to just reflect on the public comments that we've received between the last meeting about a month ago and the meeting today. I've summarized them for the group. I'll go through my summary, but could I get a quick show of hands from task force members to confirm that you have all had a chance to look at those? And I see Cheryl and Cassie and Michael. Okay. Jeff, you're off camera, but I'm gonna trust that you took a moment to read those. You've heard me say this before, when we assembled the task force, we really tried to assemble a group of people representative of the area, but we acknowledge there's a large community of people interested in this topic. And so those comments are really important for us to think through and to keep top of mind when we're developing these recommendations. So in the spirit of just reflecting on what we heard, I'll spend a minute here summarizing those for you all. And again, to let the public joining us today and listening to this after the fact know that those are taken into account and taken seriously. So a couple of different categories of public comments that we heard. One was around County Road 6, and those comments were really about deterring more traffic on the road, some suggestions around a roundabout at the intersection of County Road 6 and 7, perhaps more signage, could be as simple as no landfill traffic, and I know there's signage and there's patrolling, but stepping that up to address some of the safety concerns that people who live along 6 to the east of 7 have. And to Cheryl's point at the last meeting, maybe a separate lane or one way in, one way out traffic. So that's around 6. Some suggestions around County Road 5, this is consistent with many of the roadway improvement suggestions we heard at the last meeting, turning lanes and widening County Road 5 from Erie Parkway, and potentially a roundabout at County Road 5 and 6. You know, some general concerns are, I kind of lumped these into entrance or a new entrance. We heard some concerns that farmers worry about trucks using the ditch and crossing the ditch. And then just a general comment that water transportation is critical. So the ditch carrying water is of critical importance to agricultural interests and other folks in that area, and maintaining sound water transportation is important. And then another category around routes. So a suggestion for a dedicated route from the frontage road. I think what this commenter meant was I-25 frontage road in Erie Parkway. Some ideas around keeping roadways clean, tire washes, maybe road cleaning when it rains or snows, and some suggestions to widen roads and for sidewalks. So some physical improvements and then some kind of operations improvements too. And then the last bucket of comments was around community engagement. So a lot of community members suggested field trips. More and more people are really interested in the operations, and it helped us so much to see things in person that I'd personally echo that field trips are a really wonderful way to understand the operations and the good work put into trying to mitigate many of the concerns. Folks are curious to have more information about oil and gas waste and how that's disposed of or processed, managed. And then I put this in here, it was an idea. One commenter had an idea to add a loop to access the cardboard dumpster. So a wide range of comments, a wide range of concerns, but also just interest in helping Waste Connections, again, understand what some of those community concerns are. So very briefly here, any reflections on what I shared or anything to add to the summary? Okay. All right. Great. And there, I'd encourage the task force to go look at the FAQs too. We put some work into making sure we're kind of capturing answers to common questions. And if anyone asks you, know that that's available. Some people were requesting that. And I see that Sherry just joined. So let's wait for Sherry here. Hi, Sherry. Sherry, can you hear us?
It looks like she didn't accept her audio settings, so she has no audio for us.
Okay. We'll give her a second to join. Okay, hearing no questions or anything to add around the comments we heard, I'll ask Colin, could you go to the next slide, please? Okay. So next item on our list, and I teed this up when we were going through the agenda, is coming to a kind of an informed, agreed upon recommendation around the entrance. And we've taken, we sent out 3 different scenarios to the task force for your review. And basically, we understand that there is the possibility of keeping the existing entrance as is right now, but really with an eye on what could a new potential entrance be. And what we heard across the board was, of all the options shared at the last meeting, a new entrance along County Road 6 was the best option, just in terms of traffic flow, in terms of where the landfill waste would start to kind of shift to, and things like that. So I'm going to run through the 2 recommendations plus the option of keeping the entrance as is, and then I'd like to open it up. I'd like to kind of summarize that all for us based on recent conversations we've had with task force members, and open it up for discussion. Next slide. Oh, sorry, Colin. Colin, I'm going to ask you to just give a quick overview of the entrance location tour that I think 5 of the task force members were able to join. And this was last week. So go ahead and do that.
Yep. Yeah. So last week on June 20th, Waste Connections hosted an entrance location tour for the LTF members. So it was 5 of the LTF members, myself, Erica and David from the town, and then Randy and Mark from Waste Connections. And the tour presented an opportunity for the LTF members to visit each of the potential entrance locations and observe some of those kind of early to mid-afternoon traffic patterns around each of those locations. And then after the tour, we convened at Waste Connections main office and just kind of debriefed a little bit and talked through if folks' perspectives on the potential entrance locations had shifted or changed at all just based on getting to see them in person. And so as Morgan had hinted at, a couple of the kind of major takeaways were just that a location of a proposed entrance on County Road 6 is pretty flexible. It can be kind of further east or further west. But some major considerations are the size of a potential truck staging area, depending on where the entrance is located, as well as needing to bridge the Franco ditch that runs along a portion of that County Road 6 on the landfill's property. Also, relocating the entrance along County Road 6 would require some expansion of the roadway, paving, especially if it's kind of further west, just because that is currently a dirt road. And then also just really focusing on how residents who live on County Road 6 west of County Road 7 really want to make sure that their safety is prioritized and that traffic going to and from the landfill is being diverted away from that stretch of roadway. So I can turn over to Cheryl. I see that your hand's up, but if there were any other folks who are on the tour who want to kind of share some perspectives, I'd invite them to raise your hand. And Cheryl, we can go to you.
Colin, real fast, you said west, we're residents east.
I'm sorry, east of County Road 7.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, east. So for those of you who are on the tour, any reflections? And then for those of you who weren't on the tour, any questions? Or questions or reflections from everyone? Was it helpful to see some of the options in the ditch and just the staging areas in person? Oh, Michael, go ahead.
Yes, going on the tour was very valuable thing to be able to understand better what the option would be, especially the staging area and what exactly a staging area means, which is where the trucks go once they enter the landfill property before they get on the scale or away. Before that wasn't very clear. So this was helpful to understand what a staging area meant and how that'd be located. And also it helped see some of the traffic patterns and trucks moving up and down County Road 5, how fast they were driving, how if they're coming south from County Road 5 from Erie Parkway, they go and crest the hill before they access the corner of the Waste Connections property, which is one of the issues with that location over there because it's a blind hill going in there, and that if trucks are slowed down or cause a backup, that can be a significant problem. So you were able to see that compared to County Road 7, where you're all moving downhill towards the top sign, which you're able to see if there's a traffic congestion or anything at the time, which would be safer for residents and people traveling those roads. So those are things I saw. Wanted to share my opinion.
Thank you. Scott? Oh, get off mute, Scott.
Scott, that should be at the bottom left side of the
Sorry,
screen.
I had me muted. I thought you had me muted too. I agree with everything Michael was saying. It was good to be out there, especially able to see how much traffic was on the different roads and how there was really marginal traffic on 6. I was wondering if anybody from the town knows. I know that the Red Tail development was last minute put back on the agenda for last night's town council meeting. Was that approved or not? because that would affect how much traffic dumps out onto 5 as well.
The Red Tail Ranch proposal, revised proposal as presented, was voted down. I believe it was 5-1, and so that neighborhood proposal will not be moving forward at this time.
So that's helpful to understand future traffic flows and development just in that one area. Okay.
But they'll probably bring it back again, though, is my understanding.
I won't speculate. The meeting
Yeah.
wrapped up around 11 or so. I think I was home by 11:30. So a quick meeting by town council standards.
Okay. Any other reflections from the group? Scott shared that it was helpful to see traffic, and Michael shared helpful to see the staging area. For those of you who were there or not, any questions or reflections? Okay. All right, we'll keep on talking about this. I'll run through our potential recommendations here. Next slide, Colin. So really what we're looking at is a recommendation to relocate the entrance along County Road 6. And actually, Colin, move on to the slide with the table. I think that would be helpful. So we were looking at along County Road 6, 2 different potential areas, and they're very similar, but one is on the east side of the Freco ditch and one is on the west side, and one has the potential for a shorter staging area and one for a larger staging area. So Michael, thank you for clarifying what a staging area is. It's where trucks kind of go in, and you can imagine what that looks like on County Road 5 right now. So folks, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, the size of that might matter or not. I'm not hearing any opposition to the recommendation to move this to have a potential new location, entrance along 6. And I almost want to caution the task force against selecting between one of these, because we're not engineers and we're not ditch diggers or bridge builders. That might be folded into the recommendation of somewhere along 6 between 5 and 7, where it makes most sense from an engineering and an operations point of view. So I didn't hear from task force members that there's a strong preference on either side of the ditch or for a shorter or larger staging area. What I'm hearing is along 6 is where it makes the most sense if it was to be relocated. And the other big piece that I'm hearing is, Colin, if you don't mind moving to the next slide, there is still a desire for a lot of roadway improvements to County Road 5. So you'll see these here. These were in the packet we shared with you all. And it's not exclusive, but including widening County Road 5 and adding a separate lane for haulers in the short term, creating a left and right turn lane for vehicles leaving the landfill, again, assuming that the entrance stays here, improving signage, increasing law enforcement presence, creating a bike lane along County Road 5, and then just operations improvements to continue and improve efforts to reduce trash blowing and muddy truck tires. So some of these are specific to an entrance on 5, but the suggested recommendation that I'd like to test with the group right now is, I wrote it down here, bear with me, a recommendation to relocate the entrance along 6, and where it is exactly is based on kind of engineering and further analyses, recommending improvements to County Road 5, including the bike lanes, and potentially widening County Road 5, addressing safety concerns and addressing physical changes to roads. And really important, I know to you, Cheryl, and others, is restrictions east of County Road 7 on County Road, restrictions east of County Road 7 on County Road 6. So there are some physical roadway improvements or changes that could be made. We talked about one-way traffic. Miguel Aguilar from the town talked about a diverter, but the interest is restricting haulers from using that portion of County Road 6 to the east of County Road 7. So that's of critical importance too. And again, Cheryl, I know that for you and your neighbors, that's really what's top of mind is if the entrance is on 6, how do we make sure that the routes and the traffic flow doesn't go on County Road 6 east of 7. So my recommendation again is somewhere along 6 where it makes the most sense, and roadway improvements to 5 and restricted travel along 6 east of 7. That's our working recommendation right now based on what we heard at the last meeting and conversations between meetings. I'd like to open it up to the group to talk that through. And if that needs to be refined, we can. And I have a slide on the next slide if we need to kind of workshop it together. Okay, Cheryl, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Okay. The other thing that I need to note is not just the residents that are east on Road 6, but also the residents that are south of Road 6, the Ranch Egg Estates area, not only just the agreement, the legal agreement, but there has to be some type of physical barriers or something to prevent landfill vehicles from going south to that neighborhood as well. So it's not just us on 6, but also the residents on 7. South.
Thanks for clarifying that. And okay, great. Then yeah, there's the agreement, and then I'm hearing there's the potential to do more to restrict traffic there. Okay. Scott and then Chris.
Yeah, with the bike lane, I'd like to see that not just limited to between 6 and Erie Parkway, but all the way to County 4 and Erie Parkway. Because the bike traffic comes from both directions.
Mm-hmm. Good, great. That's a good addition. Thank you. Chris, your hand was up. It's not anymore. Do you?
I was just, yeah, with Cheryl, with obviously the south, trucks going south on 7 too is one of my concerns.
Okay. So that's good for this recommendation. Then we'll carry that over to when we talk about routes. Okay. So that, I have that recommendation here written down on a piece of paper. It hasn't been formalized yet, but and Cheryl, I see your hand up. Is that missing anything? Is there anything missing in there that we should memorialize in this recommendation, or anything that I didn't reflect well? I want to just kind of test the theory there. And Cheryl.
Okay, so one of the things that needs to go on record is that I don't want the concerns and the modifications and the changes to roads 6 and 7 to protect our neighborhoods after the fact, that it has to be done before the entrance is officially open, because once people plug in a GPS that we're on Road 6, they're going to come through. And I don't want to see some of us that are on this task force remember what it was like when we opened up the new high school on what is now Erie Parkway and Road 5, and they did it after the fact. It was after a child was hit on a hit and run trying to ride his bicycle down Road 8 from Old Town to get to the school. And I've seen it before, and I want the town to be held accountable and responsible and make sure that that is a priority before the landfill is open. I just think it would be a bad mark on the reputation of the town of Erie that they could care, that it is after the fact that they're worried about safety of its residents.
So timing is really important in the
absolutely
entrance and roadway improvements. Okay, great. Thank you, Cheryl. Jeff?
So I think we'll touch on this a little bit later when we talk about actual routes. The one thing that I think I would encourage us to remember as part of a general statement on whether we move or not is that, if we move, we make sure we're trying to mitigate as many of the issues as possible. And looking forward to future parts of this evening's conversation, really what I mean is if we move it and the main traffic pattern from haulers to the south and haulers to the west is still Highway 7 up Sheridan, we haven't address that part of what we're trying to resolve.
Jeff, say so. If Highway 7 say it again, the specific location, just so I can get it right.
Sure. Sorry. If we are moving the entrance, we should make sure that it addresses as many of the problems as possible.
But you
And the one
mentioned
that I
a
think-
specific area. Yeah, repeat the area.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So currently in the map we'll look at tonight, haulers south of the landfill and haulers west of the landfill come in on Highway 7
Okay.
and turn left on Sheridan and come up to where the current front door is. So if we move the front door and they still have to come in the same route, we haven't changed much.
Okay. Understood. Thank you. Thanks for that. And anything else, Jeff, in response to the?
No, everything else I think is perfect.
Okay. Sherry, what's on your mind?
I think about fire trucks.
Sherry, I see your hand up. Are you able to speak? Sherry, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
I thought I may have heard her a second ago, but it was very quiet. So I think if she's talking or was, she needs to be closer to the microphone. And now Sherry's muted.
Well, and Cheryl, I see your hand up, and Sherry, interrupt me if you can, if you're able to speak. Cheryl, I see your hand up. I want to go to Cassie and who have we not heard? We heard from Scott. Michael, I want to hear from you. So Michael and Cassie, anything on your mind related to kind of the draft recommendation that I shared?
No, Morgan, I'm in agreement with it. I think it's fine to move it to County Road 6 with the recommendation of location from an engineer. With obviously road improvements made to County Road 7 and or County Road 5 if they're turning out of County Road 6.
Morgan, I don't recall hearing any recital in there about, safety or, in order to improve, the safety of the traffic patterns or anything like that. We think it may be better to do that. Do we want to reference, one of the reasons we think it may be there is to improve safety?
Yeah, I had on my list here addressing safety. So thank you. And I must not have said it. Thank you for saying that. That's a really big part of this. And it's kind of the core of, I mean, there's the relocating the entrance to just improve operations and be responsive to a shift in operations. And then from the community's perspective, it's okay, what does this mean for everyday vehicle traffic, car traffic, and then hauling traffic. So safety is really important too. I don't, if folks want to be specific about safety improvements, we can. I'm really open to including that, and I would recommend we kind of stay open to including that in the recommendations. But I don't want the list to be exclusive. I'd like it to be open to responding to crash data, responding to hauling patterns, and improving safety to make sure that the recommendations are responsive. So all that said, Michael, anything specific to add about safety?
Nothing in particular until we have a little further discussion about routes. But my thought was you just need to have some sort of plug in that general recommendation about, safety, and that being one of the primary purposes.
Thank you for that. Yep. And I don't see Sherry. Oh, here's Sherry. Yeah. Oh, Sherry, is that you?
Yeah, I had
Okay,
some, I had to figure out my mic issue on my desktop here. I think the recommendation, although we say subject to engineering considerations and the like, I think that the recommendation should be that all of County Road 6 should be paved between County Road 5 and County Road 7 and not leave part of it dirt.
Okay, great. That, yeah, and we've heard that through our discussions too. So thank you for kind of bringing that back up. Could you, if folks have Cheryl, I want to get right to you in a second, but are there any objections to that recommendation to add that County Road 6 be paved between 5 and 7? You can raise your hand. I'm not seeing objections. Okay. Cheryl, is your comment related to the draft recommendation that I shared? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, yeah. So on the draft recommendation, there's a couple things that come to mind. I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that right now we have 3 different routes, 3 different ways to access the landfill. So 2 coming from the north, 1 coming from the south, and that we are asking in our scheme and vote and whatever recommendations is that every piece of landfill traffic, 600 plus or whatever, is going to be coming down one road, coming down Road 7 from Erie Parkway. And I think that for transparency, that we need to make sure that the public knows that's what we were putting out there.
Okay.
And the other thing too is I would also ask and recommend, because I'm still sketchy, I've been told over and over for the last 30 years that we've been provided with signs and that there's law enforcement, there's traffic enforcement, but that is not adequate. And I just will not, I cannot go on record and condone what is going to happen of moving the entrance to Road 6 unless we are provided with something physical and something above and beyond what we've already been given.
Okay. So signage and law enforcement and other monitoring and kind of enforcement measures, and back to your comment about timing, the commitment to that prior to relocating the entrance is very important.
Yeah, and I would actually, I honestly would like to see if there was a way that we would be given the opportunity to work with the engineers and also Miguel, the residents that are directly impacted, those of us on 6 and 7, when this proceeds further, if that can be also put in there, that there's a commitment to that.
Okay, I don't think that's something we can decide today, but I was thinking about that, Cheryl, too, is the purview of this task force might extend into reflecting community needs on some preliminary engineering or design. So we can't commit to that today, but that is noted, and at least striving for coordination with the task force. So, okay, thanks, Cheryl. Scott, and then Cassie, and then we'll kind of wrap this portion up.
Yeah, I just want to disagree with, we're telling everybody to come in off 7. That's not, I don't believe that's what we're doing at all. Because if traffic's coming from the west, they're still going to come down 5. If they're coming from the north, they may come down 5 all the way from 52. We're not dictating a route at all. And some of them may still come up Sheridan and then loop around. And we still don't know what Broomfield plans for the future of Highway 7 or for County Road 7. So I don't want to go on record as saying we're proposing one way in, one way out. That's not, I don't agree with that one bit.
And we'll get into that when we talk about routes too. And Cheryl, I heard you that a lot of traffic will be coming from County Road 7, but we'll look at the map of the routes, the current routes today, and that'll help with our discussion. So let's put a pin on routes, and Cassie, I'll go over to you.
Yeah, Morgan, mine was just the same comment as Scott. My understanding was not that we were narrowing it down to one route. So I just wanted clarification. So thanks.
Okay. All right. So next step, thank you all for being receptive to me kind of summarizing a draft recommendation based on what we've shared with you previously. This seems to be knowing that, the landfill will continue to operate, and knowing that we're just looking for options to help Waste Connections understand community concerns and streamline operations. To very broadly speaking, this seems to be a recommendation that, along with some of the safety requests and the physical changes to the roads along especially 5, seems to be an option that the task force can support. Sherry, I see your hand up. 1 second. In terms of next steps, Kearns and West will draft this as part of the overall recommendations from the task force, and When we get to some of our further meetings, we'll start to look at all these recommendations as part of, one whole package. So we're going to move on from this. We'll hear from Sherry and then we'll talk about the routes.
Actually, this is still about the recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
When we were on the tour, it was, there was a discussion about if the relocation was along County Road 6, that the landfill might want to change its operation to ensure that the west side along County Road 5 was being filled up first, so that that could be then reclaimed in the, in a shorter period of time than going over on the east side first.
So the west side along County Road 5 could be filled up first.
Yeah.
I might ask, Mark or Randy, others, what's your response to that? Mark, go ahead.
If I might, yes. So, yeah, Sherry is exactly correct. But as I think time goes on here with more of these meetings, we'll see how these various different elements fit into a final picture. And I say that because the other part that's important, which if we get time, we'll touch on later on tonight, and we did talk about it some during the tour on entrances the other day, is that odd notch on that west side. And so by relocating the entrance and being able to tackle that notch, it facilitates, to your point, Sherry, the ability to wrap up that entire west side and bring it into closure as an early order of business, so that it then provides for, future opportunities on trail systems and that sort of thing. But yeah, you're exactly right, and it's a great point. Relocating the entrance really helps a great deal in that regard.
Sherry, I still see your hand up. Oh, you just put it down. Okay, thank you, Mark. Yep, that gets to a question that we've all kind of circled around of, does the new entrance accelerate the pace of building out, or I'm sorry, community benefits, trails and apiary solar panels, things that we've kind of tossed around, whether the community benefits are contingent on expansion. And it sounds like what Mark just shared is bringing that side to closure does allow the community benefits to get started more quickly. But thank you. I'm glad we touched on that too. Scott, over to you.
I just got a quick question. You said that in the notes from the last meeting, there was an update on Highway 7 from Brighton to Broomfield. To Boulder. I don't see that anywhere. I've been looking through the email chains from that meeting. Do you know what email that was attached to?
It should be in the meeting summary from the meeting. Is that right, Colin?
It's linked in the action item section of the meeting summary.
And
I can send it to you, Scott.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, yeah, can you do that, please? Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. So we've heard the major considerations that need to be in this recommendation. Kearns and West will put this into words and written words, and this is kind of the first of our recommendations. So yay, thank you. It's been a lot of just wonderful conversation getting to this point, and it leads us into our next discussion around routes. Colin, next slide. Okay, good. I say routes, I also say routes. I don't know which one it is. We're gonna find out. I've asked Mark to present we have about 4 slides that demonstrate different current route patterns. And then we'll get into a discussion around, and keep an eye on, looking at where traffic is right now, where would we want to restrict traffic or recommend restricting traffic? And we'll get into that conversation. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, and thank you, Morgan. And if I stumble, I'm sure Randy will remotely kick me and set me straight. But I'll run through this, but I wanted to just pick up a little bit because I think it's relevant on what a couple of points, particularly key point was made by Jeff, as it related to future routing. And you all will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that a fundamental objective here is to, except for local traffic, when I say local traffic, local waste collection haulers picking up containers locally, and they need access to your residential and business areas. That what's really important to, I think, us all collectively is we don't want collection traffic east of County Road 7 on County Road 6. Second, we don't want that traffic running through the Ranch Eggs development on County Road 7. And third, I believe that the consensus is that we want to minimize to the extent possible that same traffic coming up Sheridan from 7 and then routing along 4 and then up 5. And so, some great comments were made that it's going to be difficult to have, and maybe it's not wise to have only one way in and only one way out for the reasons you guys mentioned. But I think, at least for my part, that the key is to really minimize, if not eliminate, that traffic from those particular areas. With that, I'll run into what essentially lay out the current routes into Front Range today. So a lot of the traffic, particularly some of the larger trucks, are on I-25. They will either take 7 or Erie Parkway from I-25, and then we'll head west if they're going west on 7, they will go up Sheridan, and then across on 4 and up into up 5, or otherwise they will go west all the way to County Road 5 at that major intersection, then south into our entrance. So much of the heavy truck traffic, the tandems, the transfer trailers will take one of those 2 routes. And as I understand it, most of them actually do tend to go up to Erie Parkway, and then down on 5. But we do still get quite a few coming up from 7. For the Boulder traffic, the customer western ways that brings a fair bit of volume into the site, they're coming in typically east on 7, and then they also will use Sheridan and then go across 4 and then up 5 to our entrance. And then we've got a mix of these other local and non-local vehicles that will take a mix of routes. But it looked like from the traffic data that much of the traffic is choosing to be on Erie Parkway and then hitting that major intersection and coming down 5 into the facility. But the predominant routing today is coming down 5 from Erie Parkway or heading up Sheridan from 7. So hopefully I summarized that well. And if somebody needs to add anything to that, I'll just mute out for a second.
Well, Randy, you said the predominant was down 5 to the Parkway or up Sheridan.
Much of the traffic comes down County Road 5 from Erie Parkway, or from 7 going up Sheridan across on 4 and then up 5 to the entrance.
And I wanted you to restate for the group the 3 routes that, you know, are minimized or avoided. No traffic on 7 through Ranch Eggs, no traffic east of 7 on 6, and then the last one was not on Sheridan to 4. And I'm sorry if I'm the only one confused here, but if you just said a lot of traffic comes from 7 Sheridan to 4, what was that third one that you wanted to minimize?
That's it. You nailed it. Today, a fair bit of the traffic, Morgan, does come up Sheridan, across on 4 and up to 5. And I think the goal of the group is to eliminate or minimize to the extent feasible, or eliminate that heavy truck traffic that takes that route. But today they do that. That's exactly what they do. Scott's on that, essentially on that route. Did I characterize that correctly, Scott?
Any clarifying questions for Mark before we get to some maps?
No, he's correct. I mean, the traffic coming north on Sheridan from 7 is considerable. It's probably, what did you say, 55% of the traffic, 45 to 50% of the traffic? Because it's everything from Western, and quite a bit it's coming up from the south side of the metro area. Anything coming up, STS primarily comes that way, and Western, which is the bulk of the semi traffic. You probably get a lot more of your trash trucks, your local trash trucks coming in from the north, but the semis primarily are coming up Sheridan.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly happening now, Scott. STS, for example, because of the road construction work there on 5, south of that major intersection on Erie Parkway. But you're right.
Great, thank you, Mark. This is what folks have been asking for a while, so it's helpful to see it in writing here. Probably go to the next slide.
Oh, so this is essentially an illustrative depiction of what we just talked about. It's the primary routes are highlighted in green, or the purple really reflects western ways coming out of Boulder, essentially, largely. So the primary routes today are depicted in green, or otherwise purple and blue. There is some traffic coming along that, on Erie Parkway from the west, but not as significant as the other routes. But I think that does a pretty good job of indicating where most of the traffic, how it's routing into the facility today.
Chris?
I'm sorry, you said green is what reflects what? The green?
Yeah, much of the customers today are using the green routing, essentially, and the majority of the rest is the purple and the blue. The purple is largely reflective of the volume coming from Boulder, that is hauled primarily by Western Waste.
Okay, thank you.
Cheryl?
Yeah, right there. Okay. One of the things that's puzzling me is Mark said that we want to minimize the traffic going up Sheridan. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to stop traffic from that major route that Western's already using?
Well, I think that that effort will be work done in conjunction with the town of Erie, but also what we do have the ability to do at the site, and Randy's been very successful in doing this, is to guide companies and truckers to utilize an alternate route, and there are consequences for failing to do that. So, but first, we need to establish the alternate routing that makes sense and do it in a way that is timed, Cheryl, exactly as you indicate. Let's make sure we put the roads in place to guide and safely direct the traffic into the site before we open up, you know, the new entrance. So that's a critical part of the whole process, and I think that was a good comment.
Okay. Yep, I love that we have aspirations and we know where, we, all of us kind of know where traffic goes, where we'd like to restrict it, and what some priorities are in the future, and how we get there is, will be a decent amount of work, but the role of this task force is kind of identifying from your lived experiences and those of your neighbors where there might be some problems and how that could be,
I will
addressed
mention,
with
and
recommendations.
sorry to talk over you, Morgan, but something that Scott touched on, it's sort of near and dear to my heart. If we can't accomplish the objective of routing the trucks away from Sheridan 4 and up 5, I think we're missing the point on even contemplating a relocated entrance. And Scott mentioned, the bike lanes and bike use there, and that is near and dear to my heart personally. And if we can accomplish that objective out of this aspect of the project, I think that would be a big win, and that's something that we're certainly committed to do.
Win off of Sheridan to 4 to 5. All right, what's on the next slide? Let's move to that. Mark, can you speak to this one?
Yeah, so obviously we've got a mix of customers. A high percentage of them are we have contracts with, and so we have some leverage with in terms of routing. There are other customers, because it's a public use facility, that are the general public that may on the weekend want to be able to direct material to us, or otherwise are mom and pops working on household and small business projects. So that makes up the rest of it. I think this the second bullet. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we need to be cognizant of making the landfill accessible to all. That has to be a core objective. I don't see any particular issues there. I think the primary goal here is to get the larger commercial trucks off of the roads that would be less safe or unsafe.
Mm-hmm. All right, next slide. This is the last one, and then we'll pause for questions.
Yeah, I think this is something that Randy's talked about quite a bit, and he takes quite personally. is trucks that have a habit, particularly if they're not used to coming to the facility, of not using the correct roads. I mean, I do think that the site does a super job of following up with those. But failing to do that does present a nuisance and issues to the residents. So we're aware of that. I think we do a good job of it, but we're open to feedback. We've got thick skin. If we're not doing a good job here and there, because we're not perfect, we can certainly look to do more. There's a slide, hopefully we get to at the very end, that does take a stab at a conceptual plan for a new entrance off of County Road 6. And I mention that here as it relates to the second bullet point, because it does provide for a long internal paved road, which will ultimately mitigate, mud that tracks onto the main road. So we may need to supplement that with a wheel wash, which is something that we've implemented at other facilities. But you'll see, we'll get to it later, but you'll see that by having a longer paved internal road, I think we can significantly improve the situation there.
Well, and I want to encourage the task force to hold space for the work day in and day out that Randy and his crews do to try to mitigate some of these issues, and also hold space for, hearing feedback and recommending improvements. That might not be the right word, but doing more. And so Randy, is there anything you want to share or just emphasize again about the work that you and your crew do, so that we can understand what's already being done? I know that there's enforcement. I know that there are rules. I know that there are, I'll let you speak, but yeah, share what's already happening. Yeah.
Well, typically, I have a laborer and he has a crew that comes out, and we have usually 2 to 3 laborers a day, and they do everything from picking litter on the county roads around the landfill as to picking up litter inside the landfill. A goal is always outside first if there's any there, but we also want to get anything that might be seen from the roadway and work our way back into the working area. My laborer at least runs that road on County Road 5, Sheridan, and then over to 7, and then down 6, at least 2 or 3 times a day with one laborer who can get out and pick up paper as they go. I drive that whole area, starting on the landfill entrance, going down County Road 5 to 6 to 7, coming back over to Sheridan, down to 4. I go through Vista Ridge down to Alpine Drive, and I'm looking for trash that might be in the area on the roadways. I pick up trash if I see it. The other thing that I do on Alpine is I sit near the stop sign in the mailbox and watch to see if there's any truck traffic that's not supposed to be in Vista Ridge. And I think one of the things some residents do not realize is that there are quite a few trucks that go in there that have business in Vista Ridge. Roll-off cans that actually are dropping cans at a resident or picking them up from them cleaning out a garage or doing home improvement or new roof. Then you do have some residential trucks that go in there. Tuesday, you're going to have 2 front loaders that are in there from Waste Management. There's some areas that Republic or Waste Management may pick up some in there. So there are vehicles in there that do have a business. I mean, I've actually taken pictures. I have a resident that calls me anytime there's a truck in there. And I've gone around and I've taken pictures as many as 10 roll-off boxes sitting in driveways at one time in about a 3-block area. So there are trucks that are going in there, but I feel that I've done a good job with letting the companies know that they can't cut through there from County Road 7 or from Highway 7 through Vista Ridge to come out on Alpine to get to the landfill. If I catch the driver, I call that company and I let them know that they can't do that. I'll stop a truck and I'll ask them to show me the route sheet where they're picking up the box. So they you know, they're not going to get a bunch of chances. If I catch drivers in there 1 or 2 times and he knows he's not supposed to be in there, I won't let him come into the landfill anymore. The truck can come in, but they're not coming in driving it. And I've done that to several drivers, but I think we've mitigated that. And I've done that on County Road 6 and on County Road 7. I sit over there by the electric substation there, and any truck that comes down there, I find out where they're coming from. I know recently there's been tandems that are coming down to the subdivision over there by where the old car junkyard is. They're hauling rock and material there. And I even stop them to find out where they're going. And I'll even tell them, you know, you're going down a road overweight. You may want to think about going down Erie Parkway and coming up that way. I can't stop them because they're not my account where I have any control over them, but I have mentioned that. But we do patrol those roads continuously. If we have a problem with weather where we have mud that's leaving the landfill, we have 2 sweepers running on the road. I mean, I've gotten calls from residents saying, can you make the sweepers pull off the side of the road because you're holding up traffic? So that they know these sweepers are out there. We're doing the best we can to get the mud off there as quickly as we can. And we sweep it even in dry weather to make sure any little pebbles and things like that come out are not on the road, so that when it rains again, it isn't slick. We have 2 main sweepers and we have a backup one. You'll see them cleaning the inside roads and then also the outside roads. So, you know, we do that, and those sweepers are running every day, dry or wet. So we do a lot out there. You know, like I said, perusing the landfill, looking for paper and smelling for odors, you know, all those things is what we do when we drive around. And if we find something, we try to locate where it is or what it is and remediate it as quickly as we can.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. I think it's important to hear that from you, to build off of what's already happening rather than kind of and just acknowledge that there's work and there's awareness that these are sometimes issues for people. Colin, can you go back to the second of these 4 slides with the map with the routes? What question, before we get into kind of recommendations around new routes or changes in routes, any questions for Mark or Randy to clarify what you heard? Cheryl?
Okay, I just wanted to review and make sure I understood this correctly from what Mark said, that he said if you guys can't, or if somebody can't successfully find an alternate route coming from Sheridan, then it doesn't make any sense to move the entrance.
I'm not sure that's not what I heard. I could be wrong. Mark?
Yeah, I think that the primary impetus behind relocating the entrance is to move as much traffic as makes sense away from sensitive areas, Cheryl. And I think it's perhaps I'm misspeaking, but I think it's generally the task force's view that the heavy truck traffic running down Sheridan across on 4 and up on 5 is something that you know we should focus on and restrict. So I think I think it's 2 things working together here. It's looking at a logical new entrance location that while also seeking, you know, primary access routes that avoid these more sensitive areas. So I don't know. I don't think that we can eliminate traffic going down Sheridan, but I think that I'm confident that as we work with the town of Erie, that we can come up with a game plan here to really severely restrict that traffic.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Feel free to continue to ask questions. Thank you, Cheryl, for that. That was helpful. Let's go around the, our little virtual table, and knowing that the recommendation is for a new entrance along 6. Currently, where are sensitive areas? Where would the task force members say are sensitive areas? If you feel like you've shared it before, just say, Morgan, I've shared it before. We'll look back in our notes, but I kind of want to voice right now, where are the sensitive areas? And then let's treat those as pinch points that we can craft a recommendation around, knowing that, again, there's going to be traffic in neighborhoods if they're picking up roll-offs or picking up your trash. But for vehicles coming from other areas, where are the sensitive areas? So Scott and then Sherry.
I think Mark summarized it perfectly. I don't see any need to add to what he said.
So Ranch Eggs area, east of 7 on 6, and then what we spent some time discussing, Sheridan to 4 to 5. That's what
Correct.
okay, thank you. Sherry?
I think the route along Highway 7 from Boulder is sensitive, and it really may not be related to relocation of the entrance. I mean, it's a 2-lane road going through the town of Lafayette, right past an elementary school, right past a rec center. I don't understand why they go down 7 and not Erie Parkway, or when County Line Road was open going north on County Line Road. But my biggest concern with traffic is when you look at it, at least Erie Parkway is 4 lanes. So it gives a little bit of buffer, and the houses are not right on the road like they are in Lafayette. So there's a slight little vegetation buffer along Erie Parkway. But 7 is just 2-lane. You get behind a semi truck hauling waste material, and you're going to get your window chipped. You're going to have concerns about things flying out at you. And it's just, to me, not a good road for that purpose. Now, if there is plans to make 7 a 4-laner with some buffer, that's great, but I don't know how they're going to do that through Lafayette.
And that's Arapahoe, right? And
yeah.
Can anyone summarize for us what those CDOT plans are for? I think that's still in the planning stages, but is a 4-lane road in the future?
I'm not going to begin to speculate what or when CDOT will improve Highway 7. I know it's in their plans, but I knowing CDOT, it could be years or decades. So I wouldn't make.
Gary, I do hear you that 2 lanes, a hauling route that's on a 2-lane road is a concern, and perhaps this purple line could be, some of it could be diverted to the orange.
Hey, Morgan.
Yeah, yeah, Randy.
Yeah, the road on Arapahoe Road, coming from where County Line Road used to come out in it, that is being widened to a 4-lane each way, all the way to the entrance into Lafayette. So that improvement is in the process of being done right now. The section in Lafayette, who knows? There's a lot that has to be done before they can improve that.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. And I hear you, David. Let's not pin our efforts on CDOT's timeline. But Sherry, that's noted that 2 lanes matters, 4 lanes matters too. Okay, Michael.
Well, I was going to come at it a little differently than Sherry, thinking about, being in the northern portion of Erie there off of Erie Parkway, that you have, if you've transitioned traffic up onto Erie Parkway, you're going to drive through more of the Erie residents' neighborhoods. You're going to be next to the rec center, all of the fields, the library, kind of the heart of what, by Old Town Erie, and then you end up driving past the highway or the high school as well, which we already heard a horrible story of accidents happen there with children. And if we're worried about safety, being past schools, no matter what age, we try to avoid those things. So I would be thinking that portion is sensitive, and as well as being on County Road 5, all of those homes are being developed in Westerly and in Sunset, and then eventually Erie Highlands will be, completed as well. So those would be areas of concern versus, County Road 7 has, much less development on it comparatively. So those were my thoughts.
Quick follow-up, Michael, do you,
Yeah.
from your vantage, in your home or just moving around, do you feel that orange route along the parkway, does that feel congested with truck traffic right now?
Yes, I do feel it. I am right on the first house in Erie Highland. So sitting here in my office every day, I can hear, every truck that drives by and hits their Jake brake. So I do understand what traffic is moving past me.
Mhm. Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I was just going to agree with Scott and Mark. I think the concerns about the high school notwithstanding, I think if we can get people driving east-west past the high school, that is safer than having them be on the same road with students, which is 5. Erie Parkway, part of the long-term plan for the town of Erie is that road gets improved all the way to I-25. So I think it becomes the more attractive route. The wild card in all of this is what Broomfield decides to do with Sheridan at some point in the future. I don't think we can speculate on that, but that I recognize that, Randy, I see your guys out there every day. Every time I jog past Alpine, I see people out there either cleaning or keeping an eye on things. So I applaud the work you guys do. I just know that if as much as we make Erie Parkway the preferred route, if Broomfield or when Broomfield changes Sheridan, that might become the more attractive route. So I think it's critical that we get as much as Western Disposal's traffic as possible off of Sheridan 4-5. But we also make sure that we're communicating with all of our regional stakeholders that we want people off those routes, and we need them to help us.
Scott?
Yeah, just to touch on Sherry's concern, there is no 4-lane coming out of Boulder going east-west. It doesn't matter whether it's Arapahoe or a Baseline, or there's no option of a 4-lane at this time. So they're going to be on a 2-lane road somewhere. I don't know that there's an acceptable to even Erie Parkway once it gets down past that newer development there where the roundabout is. It cuts down to 2 lanes as well. So there's no, the 2-lane option is going to be there no matter which option. I mean, Western is basically coming off of Arapahoe and 75th, or no, actually it's further west than that. There is no 4-lane option for them to come this direction.
Yeah. So Cheryl, thank you, Scott. Sherry and Cheryl, I see your hands up. I want to go to Cassie and Chris first. We haven't heard from them yet. So Cassie, Chris, any sensitive areas you want to flag? Items you've heard you want to emphasize?
I mean, I think the high school, the trucks driving past the high school is a safety concern as well. I mean, I get that. So I think that's a sensitive area.
Is there anything you'd add to the list we have said, those 3 main areas we want to prevent traffic on? I mean, Ranch, but yeah.
Well, yeah, that, I mean, I guess I just wonder, Erie Parkway has the most lanes, so but it's right by the high school. So I just, I mean, that's a concern for me. And I get it too with the County Road 5 and all the traffic and the trash and everything that people are dealing with. I feel for those guys too.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Okay, Cassie?
Yeah, Morgan, I guess I feel like there's really no area that isn't super sensitive. I mean, you can route as much not to come in on Sheridan, but before we know it, we're gonna have two huge subdivisions on either side of County Road 5, and it's almost going to become more sensitive than coming in from the south on Sheridan. So I guess my thought is, can it just be dispersed across multiple
Yeah.
ways in? Just to try to not have 100% or 90% of trucks coming in from one way. Some come from the south, some come from County Road 7, some come down County Road 5. I mean, I don't know how realistic that is and who could even like regulate that, but I just think every area as Erie grows is just becoming a sensitive area. So there's no solution here.
That's, I also wrote down on my notes here, balance. We can't snap our fingers, get rid of these routes and traffic. Is there a way to kind of rebalance it to decrease the burden overall? But so let's keep that in mind as we keep discussing too. So Sherry, please go ahead.
I wanted to say I agree with Michael about Erie Parkway. I think that it's going through sensitive areas too. Though I just don't understand the Highway 7 route. To me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I drive that road periodically on Baseline and all the way into Boulder, and it's just not a really good road for you know, big traffic. But neither is Erie Parkway. I do like the green route that, you know, people are south from the Denver metro area, that blue dashed line going up on I-25 and then over. To me, if there's some way to route traffic away from residential areas onto I-25 and down to the landfill, to me, that's a preferred route. Because there's development all the way from Erie into Boulder.
Okay, that's an interesting.
And as Scott said, there are 2-lane roads. Pretty much, you know, there's not 4-laners except for when you hit Erie Parkway.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, Cheryl, go ahead.
Okay, all right, 2 things. I want to remind everybody that there is an agreement, a 1991 agreement with RENA as far as using 7, and that going forward with any type of negotiations that hopefully the city planners or the politicians are going to honor that or be aware of it before it turns into a major problem or a major lawsuit if they choose to disregard it. The other thing is, I'm sorry, guys. I was saying earlier that it seemed like everybody was going to be routing things down Road 7. And from hearing everybody's conversations, everybody's concerned about stuff coming down Highway 7 or coming down Erie Parkway. And I get all of that, but it's almost like the elephant in the room. Doesn't that mean the safest way is to come down what everybody's ultimately going to think, just shoot it down 7?
You mean Highway 7 or County Road 7?
County Road 7.
County Road 7. Hold on, Cheryl. I want to understand what you're saying. So,
okay,
I'm gonna recount what happened over the course of the last hour. So you were saying, you know, traffic's going to end up coming down County Road 7. We heard some pushback there that it is dispersed, and we see how it might be dispersed on the map right here. But what you're hearing is people are, you know, Sherry just made an interesting recommendation to route stuff up, down 25, out of neighborhoods to the landfill. And what you're saying is, hey, that's 7. That's what I just said, right? Is that what you?
Actually, no. I mean, if you're going to route off of Highway 7, how would you route it though? Where would you send them?
Okay. I hear your concern around.
And I do want to make one comment that absolutely, there's nobody here that can't deny how horrible it is for those people that are living on Highway 7 in Lafayette. And that is absolutely not is what I will allow to happen to my neighborhood on Road 6 or Road 7, because that is exactly what the potential could be. And shame on the planners of Lafayette to allow that to happen. But I have faith and trust that Erie will not do the same thing that Lafayette did to their residents.
And we're building into the entrance recommendation restrictions on 6, so that will be factored in. And I know that it's, you know, if you look at what happened in the past, you're worried because
yeah,
there's a lack of trust on behalf of your neighborhood. So thank you for reminding us. I see Jeff and then Cassie.
Yeah, I was just going to add one comment on the Erie Parkway conversation. You know, one of the things that we evaluated years ago when coming up with the Erie Parkway proposal that gets you all the way to Gateway at I-25 and all that stuff, the high school is set back far enough that I don't think we need to consider like the impact of diesel fumes and that sort of thing on Erie Parkway as impacting high school students. They've got an entire football field and parking lot buffer there. They are in school during the time that most of the truck traffic occurs. When they're using the field, it's after landfill hours. So there's sort of minimal impact there. And then from the current phase of Westerly on is nothing has been committed to yet. So it's actually an optimum time to consider changing a truck route so that the developers coming in there and the planning commission and the council can take that into account. If there's direction that we want people coming in off of I-25 on Erie Parkway, then that's something that the council can look at for every new project coming in and say, let's make sure there's adequate buffer, let's make sure there's adequate accel and decel lanes, let's make sure that there's clear right of way for people getting in and out of the neighborhoods, all that kind of stuff. I think that the challenge that we're dealing with, and you know, it's similar to the Lafayette problem. We had a landfill in place, we put development around it and never really thought about what happens when you have 3,500 homes and 1,000 high school students all trying to share a road with trucks turning in and out of the landfill. I know that there is no place in Erie that isn't going to be impacted, but Erie Parkway gives us the best chance of planning for that impact going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, homes, students, landfill traffic, there's a lot to manage. And I like that. I like just that perspective, Jeff, of that this is the time to memorialize a desired future state. And that's the role of the task force here. We can't get into, we're not going to go out and measure the road, and we're not going to go out and put engineering recommendations in here, but we can memorialize a desired future state. And that balance, I think, is critical. If there's an imbalance in the traffic that's creating safety concerns or quality of life concerns, let's write those down and suggest ways to address those. So, Cassie.
Thanks, Morgan. I'll be quick. Just 2 thoughts. Cheryl, I agree we should honor the Ranch Eggs agreement. And when I said County Road 7, I didn't mean coming up from the south, just dropping down from the north. I just wanted to clarify that. But the other thing is, I know Erica mentioned this when we were doing the tour, and just the impact of emissions if we are routing trucks coming in from Boulder, actually driving past Sheridan, going all the way out to 25 and going up, and how much more like just emissions that impact that will put on the environment to make them go all the way around the landfill like that. And I think that's worth considering too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Is there, I mean, Mark, Randy, is there a slide in here that shows us the balance of, basically this purple and orange, I mean, all the different routes? Was that the first slide? Could you go back, Colin, one? Thank you. No.
I'll leave this primarily to Randy, but I think based on what I've seen is actually a bit more of the total traffic load comes down from the Erie Parkway County Road 5 intersection down and into the site. Generally, there's road construction going on right now, but generally there's a lot of traffic that comes down there, and it will be coming off of I-25 or coming from Erie Parkway to the west. And then the rest of it predominantly is just on State Highway 7 coming up Sheridan, and then along 4 and up on 5. It's really those two. It's those two routes, right, Randy?
Yeah, and Mark, you're correct that more of the traffic comes from the north, down County Road 5 from Erie Parkway, than what actually comes up 7 and on Sheridan. Now, that's all traffic. You do have more transfer trailers that come up on Sheridan than what comes down County Road 5 from Erie Parkway, except for a few. All recycling comes down that way, and MBI will come down that way. So there are some transfer trailers that come down Erie Parkway to County Road 5 as opposed to using Sheridan. But the bigger truck traffic transfer trailers, they'll come down that way. But the majority of all traffic is, probably 60% or more, maybe even up to 65% comes from the north.
Okay.
Randy, this is not supposed to be like an open debate between Waste Connections people. We don't want to take this over,
right.
but
Yeah.
a question about Weston specifically and Boulder, because that seems to be a key item that the task force members are talking about and a significant challenge. Has Weston tried running down 36 to that Northwest Parkway that then loops around to 25 and then go up that way? I know it's out of their way some, but it's good roads.
Yeah, it is good roads, but their shortest hauling distance is down 7 in Arapahoe Road. That is ultimately why they come down that road. Now that's the transfer trailers. Their smaller trucks come from everywhere, depending where they're hauling from. They'll even come up Erie Parkway. They really have two options that are the shorter options, and that's eventually hitting Erie Parkway or coming down Arapahoe Road and hitting Sheridan that way. The other way, that's going to take them a little bit longer, and that road can be congested in the morning as well as anywhere else with traffic.
Yeah.
Well, this is maybe something we can talk a bit more internally about.
Yep.
Just
I'm not saying we can't
conversation with them, because if there's a way to get those transfer trailers off of Erie Parkway and coming from the west or otherwise 7 from the west. That will head off quite a bit of the concern I'm hearing about.
Yeah, and that's a good segue. I would like to summarize some of the concerns, and there are concerns with the safety of people using Erie Parkway and the high school there and residents. Michael, you and many others. There's concerns with western kind of traffic coming from the west using a 2-lane road on Arapahoe on Highway 7. There's concerns, with emissions, with, if we were to change some of the, distances, there's an emissions implication. So I'm hearing that not all, but a majority of the traffic comes from the west. A lot comes from 25 and from the east, but some of the main concerns are with the safety and the drivability and kind of usability of those 2 main western routes. I want to ask this question, then I want to move on to the last piece of our meeting, and we can pick this back up once Waste Connections has had a chance to discuss some options, knowing what the concerns are. My question is there an opportunity to even rebalance some of the traffic coming from the west, not all of it, to other routes where the noise, the emissions, the whatever else comes with traffic could be mitigated a little bit? Just some of that rebalancing there. Randy, what's your thought on that? Any thoughts from Waste Connections on just parsing out some of the routes and rebalancing some of the routes?
Yeah, I threw out just a speculative alternate route that takes those transfer trailers from Western off of these, these other roads. But I don't know how viable that is. We can take a look at some other alternatives. I'm honestly, I know my roads around Castle Rock. I'm less familiar with the roads up where you are. So I'd hate to suggest something that's not really that smart, but it's something that we can talk about internally. Because Western has a stake in this too, and we can certainly on more local roads leverage a bit more and using the town put actual physical or signage limitations on, you will take this road and you will not take that road. But telling a Western, you're not going to get to use Erie Parkway anymore, is probably a step too far. But that's not to say that something can't get worked out here. So.
Well, we've heard kind of where the landfill task force members stand, some of the sensitive areas in their minds. And just, we've heard some interesting suggestions for rebalancing the routes. And I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to imply that Western has to, go through Wyoming to get down here, but I would love to just have as an action item for Waste Connections to think internally about involving, or I guess the best way to put it is understanding where there's flexibility for some of the traffic to use different routes. And I don't know what kind of traffic that would be, what kind of trucks. But if there's a chance to alleviate some of the traffic on 7, some of it on Erie Parkway, put it somewhere else, that might create some breathing room on those roads and alleviate some of the traffic concerns. So Cheryl, let's hear from you next. But just in terms of closing out this discussion, we will kind of summarize these concerns and different options and bring to the task force some potential recommendations at the next meeting. And this is one of the biggest issues that the task force will handle. So we'll bring it up again at our next meeting in July. And if we need more time at future meetings, we can. But this has been a good kind of round robin to air some of the concerns and priorities around the routes. And Cheryl, over to you before we move on.
Okay, real simple. What is a transfer trailer?
I wish I'd asked you earlier because I'm curious.
Yeah,
too.
hey, Cheryl.
Yes.
Okay, have you seen the big long box trucks?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Those are transfer trailers. Those are the ones that have the netting across the top. They're a semi trailer.
Okay.
Yeah. And what they do is they're a transfer station. They load the top with trash from the top, fill it up. They put a canopy over it. And then when they bring it out, that floor actually walks the trash out the back end.
Okay. Okay.
That's why they're called a walking floor.
Okay. Got it. All right.
Does
Now
that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I tried to Google it while you guys were all talking and I still couldn't figure it out. So thank you. I appreciate it. It totally makes sense, Randy.
My apologies, Cheryl. I thought we were all garbage men and women here, but I guess not.
Cheryl, I like seeing you model us asking these questions because if you didn't know, there's probably at least one other person who didn't. So just a reminder to the task force to ask the questions. Okay, our facilitation team, Colin and I, we don't go away between meetings. We think about this stuff, and if there's anything that comes to you after the meeting about routes, please share that with us. Call, email, find us. But with that in mind, the one thing Colin, I'll ask you to move slides to the next section. And one thing we will bring to the task force at the next meeting is the beginning of a discussion around land swaps, transfers, easements, redesigning, or a recommendation around expansion and different permitted areas for the landfill. So probably not using the right words from Waste Connections point of view, but there are some options on the table of there's just a discussion that needs to happen at the task force level around the permit and a potential for permit expansion. So you're going to hear Mark quickly run through a number of slides. And our question for you at the end of this handful of slides is this enough information to inform that discussion? What else do you need? And if there's items that you need, Waste Connections and the town and Kearns and West will work to get that to you all in advance of the next meeting. So in order to have an informed conversation around expansion, different permit, what information do you need? So with that, Mark, I'll ask you to give that overview, and task force members keep that in mind as you're listening.
All right, thank you, Morgan. All right, so I will be brief, sensitive to everyone's time here. Thank you for all your patience and diligence here. So this is a site map that seeks to identify 2 specific locations near the landfill facility, Front Range. The first I want to point out is something that's labeled existing WC. That doesn't stand for water closet, that stands for Waste Connections. So existing Waste Connections truck maintenance and parking yard, which is off of County Line Road. And then the next thing I want you to note is another arrow pointing to the northeast corner of the Front Range landfill, and that's labeled Future Waste Connections Truck Maintenance and Parking Yard. So when I say we, Waste Connections has a hauling facility, so we park trucks and containers and do maintenance on those trucks at an existing yard there off of County Line Road. And the notion is to move that facility onto essentially land adjacent to the landfill. Why? Well, the idea behind it, and I should mention this also. So we own the land that the existing Waste Connections facility is at on County Line Road. We, Waste Connections, owns that property. The town of Erie owns that property that's about 10 acres, a rectangular piece of property in the northeast corner of Front Range landfill, just right off of County Roads 7 and 6. So town of Erie owns a proposed future location. We own the existing location. So the notion is that the town assumes our existing facility and we clean and relocate our facility to the town of Erie's property in that northeast corner. The town is interested, as I understand it, in our existing property, primarily in that it looks like it would serve as a good trailhead location for the existing and future trails mapping. And I do believe, but don't quote me, I think some of the existing buildings may have some additional value, but it was seen as an opportunity to establish a strategic sort of trailhead there and obviously get that use, the parking and maintenance of trucks and containers out of that particular area of the town and put it and essentially co-locate it, if you like, with the landfill. I'll point out briefly, just one one actual advantage of this, and that is that at the end of every day, all of the trucks in our existing yard will go and deposit their load at the landfill before they come back onto the main roads and head back to the facility to park. Well, if it's co-located, if the facility is co-located with a landfill, on their last load, they're not leaving again. They literally will have, we would propose to have an internal road so that when they've unloaded, they will literally go straight to the yard, internal to the property, not accessing any of the county roads or any of the state roads to go back to the existing yard and just park, refuel, and get maintained. So there is some benefit there in, yeah, certainly emission savings, but also it's just less overall traffic on the local road system. So that's the overview of that. And maybe I'll just run through the rest of these, Morgan, just before there are any, I believe any questions to the end. So next. Okay, this is a bit hard to see, to be honest, but this is an aerial, and it shows there is actually an arrow pointing to the yard that says existing truck maintenance and parking yard, but it's not particularly helpful. But it's directly west of the municipal airport there, and it is pretty adjacent to Coal Creek, which is where the trail is. Or one of your trails. It's a soft trail there, I believe, that runs essentially north-south along Coal Creek. Moving on. That's just more of the existing and I think planned trail system, and you can see that the existing facility is on one of the trails. So I don't know how helpful that is, but there you go. And this is the town of Erie's existing property that I mentioned in the northeast corner of essentially the Front Range facility. So that's where we would invest in a new trucking facility. And you'll see later a proposed routing to that future yard. It's right next to the substation as this United Power substation, as you can see there. Okay, moving on. All right. This, I know I'm going through this quickly, but this is essentially the Front Range landfill in its final permitted form. So if we don't go through with any of the waste footprint changes, trail systems, entrance facility changes, maintenance yard, this is how it looks in the end as it stands today. That's basically, we'll be filling to that essential profile, taking up essentially that space. So you don't have to memorize this because we'll do a side-by-side at the very end, I think. But that's just a quick look of what things, how the landfill would finish out as is currently approved. So next. So this is in concept many of the things, well, the things that we've been talking about to date, and we're going to be talking about in the next couple months. So let me start at the north, actually, because it's been the topic we've been spending all our time on today. And what we've conceptualized is a new entrance coming in off of County Road 6. There's an arrow at the top that's labeled potential location of future entrance. Hopefully everyone can see that. So imagine the vehicles are coming in there, and then they'll head south on an internal road, and the vast majority are just going to make a right turn and head basically in a northwest direction to our scale facilities before crossing over the improved Frico ditch at an elevation that it's pretty close to grade there, actually. So we're accomplishing a few objectives here. Long internal road that I sort of hinted on earlier, coming off of 6, long access to the entrance facilities, then turning close to the point where the Frico ditch crosses County Road 6. And thereby, you know, in terms of the traffic and traffic maneuvering, we're being, I think, somewhat sensitive to the future development of Westerly that kind of edges to the south, close to County Road 6 there on that west side. But also the entrance is pretty much opposite the oil and gas midstream facilities on the other side of the road. So we thought it was smart from that perspective. And then I mentioned that there's that fork at the end of the south run of the entrance road. There is a fork. So we're proposing that at the end of the day on the last load, the trucks, if we do this maintenance facility, would actually just stay on property and just go straight into the yard and won't get back out onto County Road 6. So that's that. Again, it's in concept. The task force may after looking at this more and thinking about it, indicate that this is not what they want to see. But we're showing it there in concept. The green hashed area up there is area carved out for an expansion of our renewable energy facility, which we will talk about later, and a sustainability campus, which we can talk about later. Let me then quickly drift to the 2 proposed changes in the footprint, the limits of future waste.
And Mark, I'll
First,
ask you to keep it really short also.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. First, this notch area on the west side, we propose to take that awkward notch out. Ultimately, we're proposing that there would be some trail system running through that area too. We would close that area out on the front end of our development. The other area of development is an internal piece of property where the town of Erie's water tanks are today. Those tanks would get relocated to the southeast, but still on our property. There would be a property swap there. And then you see the meandering trail systems again in concept. We'd want to bring some portions of that into action sooner rather than later. And I think that pretty much does it for the overview. Sorry.
No, that's great.
The next slide is a side-by-side, so you can just see the difference.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I think what we'll do is pull this all back up at the next meeting. Perhaps there's more information that the task force members need. Our question, we're out of time. I want to just take 2 or 3 more minutes. We'll be done. We'll be finished. We are going to have an action item for task force members to tell us in writing or have us call you and ask us what other information do you need to think through the expansion area, potential land swaps, anything else that Mark shared. I mean, the question to the task force will be, now you see what the desired future conditions are from Waste Connections, and what recommendations would the task force have to make sure that it preserves kind of the spirit of this task force to reflect community concerns in any changes here. So that will be an action item. We'll ask for that from you within the next couple weeks so that we can prepare for the next meeting. Scott, I'll ask you to make your comment and then I'll wrap up our meeting.
Yeah, just a real quick question for Mark. With the moving of the entrance, would it be possible to fill in the notch without doing the rest of the expansion? Is that something you guys would consider?
Let me repeat it back to you, and then you'll have to correct me. So if we didn't move the entrance, could we still fill the notch in and then close out the west side sooner?
We did move the entrance.
No, the other way around. If we if we move the entrance, would we be able to do the fill in the notch without necessarily adding the rest of the expansion?
We'd have to think about that a little bit more because it may not make sense for us to make an investment in a whole new set of entrance facilities, at least for the next 10, 15 or so years. But rather it might make sense for us to fill out the east portion of the site under that scenario and then just come back and put in some smaller scale entrance facilities at the very end. So it would just be, we would look at the phasing a little bit differently, Scott, but we can talk a lot more about that and we can explain a bit more detail why.
Thank you, Mark. So on the docket for the next meeting is we'll continue the conversation around routes and we'll organize a lot of the concerns and some different options and scenarios to test and discuss with the group. So we'll move that along at the next meeting. We'll talk about this topic. We'll talk about potential for an expansion, a different permitted area, the land swap. I just heard a conversation that we can have around phasing, and just examining the different trade-offs between some of the items on the table here. In terms of action items, like I said, for the route discussion, Kearns and West will organize a lot of the thoughts we heard and bring that to you all. We'd like to ask task force members to think through what you just heard, and this is in the packet you received for the meeting too. Think through that and come to us with any other information needs, data, just anything that might help inform that discussion on the 31st of July. And with that, we made a lot of progress today. We got through a lot in our short 2 hours, and I appreciate everyone's just time and just effort to help us gather on Zoom. So we had a great meeting. We'll meet in person at the next meeting on July 31st. And to members of the public who stuck with us through our last 2 hours, your attention to this and your contributions now and online are greatly appreciated and are really taken into effect. So your time matters, and we thank you for that. All right, David, Erica, anything on behalf of the town to say before we let folks go?
Nothing for me. I really appreciate everybody's time tonight. I think it was a fantastic conversation. These are some extremely difficult things to work through. There are no perfect solutions, and we really genuinely, from the town's perspective, this is invaluable to hear from residents. What needs to be done here? What is the best solution available? So thank you everyone for your contributions.
Okay. Hope everyone enjoys.
Thanks so much. Sorry, Morgan. I was just going to say I would echo that, and please just keep your questions coming and your comments. We really appreciate those, and we are reading them and we are discussing them and bringing them to the task force during these meetings, but also beyond that. So thanks so much for all your participation.
Yeah, thank you for volunteering to do this for everyone on the task force. We appreciate it, and just everyone's contributing in really special ways, and it matters, and we're going to come to some good recommendations. So enjoy the holiday and enjoy the month of July, and we'll see you in a month. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Marty.